The snow began falling inside the throne hall the moment Queen Elara was sentenced. At first, the nobles believed it was ash drifting from the black iron braziers burning beside the moon tribunal. But when the white flakes touched the heated stone floor without melting, silence spread through the court like poison. Even the wolves stopped breathing. Elara stood alone beneath the great silver arch of the throne chamber, wrists chained behind her back with moonsteel forged to suppress alpha blood. The metal had already burned her skin raw, yet she kept her spine straight beneath the weight of hundreds of watching eyes. Queen of Ashenfang, Luna of the Northern Throne, wife of Alpha King Kale, Traitor, Baron. The words circled above her like ravens. The court had spent 3 years whispering them behind jeweled sleeves and goblets of blood wine. Tonight, they finally dared to say them aloud. She carries death in her womb, one noblewoman hissed. She has no womb, another answered coldly. That was the problem. Elara closed her eyes for one brief moment, not because the insults hurt anymore, but because beneath her ribs, hidden beneath layers of fear and silence, 2 tiny heartbeats fluttered against her soul. Alive. The council had called her barren for years, while her body quietly guarded the kingdom's greatest secret. The children moved again. A sharp pulse of cold spread through her stomach. Snow gathered thicker around her feet. Lord Varric noticed immediately. The first voice of the royal council rose from his seat beside the throne, robes of dark fur trailing across the stone. His face looked carved from old bone, elegant and cruel in equal measure. There, he said softly. You all witness it now. The nobles leaned forward. The frost curse answers her. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Elara lifted her chin. There is no curse. No? Varric smiled faintly. Then why does winter follow you indoors? The snow continued to fall. Soft. Silent. Wrong. The moon tribunal chamber had stood for 600 years. Fires burned beneath the stone itself. Nothing froze here. Yet frost now crept across the silver pillars. The wolves in the room shifted uneasily. Some lowered their eyes. Others bared their teeth. Because deep in ancient pack memory, every bloodline feared the same forgotten name. Frostfang. An extinct royal line erased centuries ago after nearly destroying the northern kingdoms. A bloodline capable of freezing wolves alive from the inside. Elara's pulse stumbled. No. Impossible. She knew almost nothing about her mother's family. Only whispers. Only fragments. She had spent her life being told she came from weak blood. Unworthy blood. Beautiful enough to become Luna. Perhaps, but empty. Useless. A queen incapable of giving the throne an heir. That was the wound. The kingdom carved into her. Year after year. Not ugliness. Not weakness. Absence. Every royal feast became another humiliation wrapped in silk and gold. Women touched their swollen bellies when she passed. Priestesses offered fertility blessings loud enough for the court to hear. The council watched her cycle, like hunters tracking wounded prey. And through it all, Kael remained beside her. At least in the beginning. Elara forced herself to look toward the throne. The sight of him still hurt. Alpha King Kael sat draped in black ceremonial armor, beneath banners of silver wolves. Moonlight spilled across the hard lines of his face, catching the scar running from his jaw to throat the mark left by the war that made him king. Power radiated from him, even in stillness. The court feared him. The enemy kingdoms feared him. Sometimes Elara feared him too. Not because he was cruel, because he carried loneliness like a blade. Kael had once looked at her as though she were the only warm thing left in the world. Now he looked trapped. His golden eyes remained fixed on the snow gathering at her feet. Not cold, not hateful, terrified. The realization pierced deeper than the chains. He knows. Not the children, but something. Lord Varric turned slowly toward the throne. Your Majesty, the evidence is undeniable. The Queen has failed to produce heirs, and now forbidden winter magic answers her presence, combined with her treasonous correspondence near the Ravenmark border. It was forged, Elara said sharply. The hall echoed. A queen interrupting the council was nearly sacrilege, but she would not kneel quietly while lies buried her children. Varric's expression never changed. The seal was yours. Stolen, the commander confessed. Under torture. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably, because that part was likely true. Varric sighed, as though disappointed by her stubbornness. You leave us little choice. Ilara's stomach tightened, not from fear, from instinct. Run. The urge hit so violently her knees nearly buckled. The twins moved inside her again, not gently this time, warning her. The air in the chamber grew colder. Tiny cracks spread through goblets of wine. One of the braziers suddenly hissed into steam. A low growl rolled through the hall. Not from a wolf, from the throne itself. Kael stood. The entire court immediately fell silent. Even Varric stepped back, because when the Alpha King rose in anger, the room felt smaller around him. Kael descended the throne steps slowly, black cloak dragging behind him like shadow over snow. His gaze never left Ilara. The mate bond between them stirred painfully alive. Even buried beneath weeks of strange numbness, she still felt him. The pull, the ache, the unbearable need. Kael stopped only inches away from her, close enough for her to smell frost, cedar smoke, and blood beneath his skin, close enough to see exhaustion buried inside his eyes. He looked thinner. No, worse. Zikr. The realization made fear creep into her chest. Kael's wolf had always been monstrously strong, yet now darkness clung to the veins beneath his throat. Something was killing him. You should have told me, he said quietly. Ilara blinked. Her breath caught. For one horrifying second, she thought he somehow knew about the twins. But Kael's gaze dropped to the snow around her feet. The frost, he murmured. His voice held no accusation, only grief. Ilara swallowed painfully. I didn't know, and that was true. Not really. Not until tonight. Kael's jaw tightened. Then suddenly, violently, he coughed. Blood splattered across his glove. The cord gasped. Kael hid it quickly, but Ilara saw. Varric saw too, and the smile that flickered across the council lord's face lasted less than a second. But it was enough. Ilara understood instantly. The council wasn't only trying to remove her, they were weakening Kael, isolating him, slowly poisoning the throne itself. Kael straightened before anyone else could react. Leave us. Varric's eyes sharpened. Your Majesty, that was not a request. The Alpha command hit the chamber like thunder. Several lesser wolves immediately dropped to one knee. Even Ilara's pulse reacted instinctively. But Varric did not kneel. Interesting. Very interesting. The old council lord lowered his head just enough to appear respectful. The Moon Tribunal has already begun. If the Queen influences you privately now, the Southern Pax may question your judgment. Kael stepped closer. The candles flickered violently. You forget your place, and you forget your duty. Varric answered softly. The room froze. No one spoke to the Alpha King like that. No one. Kael's wolf flashed behind his eyes. Gold. Dangerous. Ancien. For one terrifying moment, Ilara thought he would rip Varric apart before the entire court. Then the High Priestess moved. Old and pale beneath layers of silver veils, she approached carrying a black ceremonial bowl filled with moon water. The moment she whispered over it, agony ripped through Ilara's chest. She cried out. Kael staggered back, as though struck by invisible claws. The mate bond. Something was wrong with the mate bond. The connection between them twisted unnaturally, smothered beneath cold magic that smelled of grave dust and silver ash. Ilara clutched her stomach instinctively, protecting the twins. The High Priestess's eyes widened slightly. She felt them. No, 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 no. Panic surged through Ilara's veins. Kael looked at her sharply. For one heartbeat, their eyes locked. And she knew. He felt them too. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. Enough to understand she had hidden something precious from him. Ilara, he whispered. Varric immediately stepped between them. The king has remained silent during judgment, he announced loudly to the court. According to ancient law, silence from the throne confirms the council's authority. Kael's head snapped toward him. I said no such. Then reject the council openly. Varric interrupted. Reject the law before every alpha present. Protect the cursed queen, and watch the Northern Alliance fracture before winter. Silence crashed through the hall. The trap closed perfectly. If Kael defended her publicly now, civil war would begin before dawn. Varric had planned this carefully. Kael knew it. Elara knew it. And the council knew he would hesitate. Not because he didn't love her, because he loved his kingdom too much to burn it for one woman. Even his mate. Pain hollowed her chest. The twins shifted restlessly beneath her ribs. The high priestess slowly lifted the black bowl. By the judgment of the Moon Tribunal, she declared, Queen Elara is stripped of title and exiled beyond the frostline. The nobles lowered their heads. Any pack who shelters her shall be punished. The chains tightened painfully around Elara's wrists. Any healer who aids her shall lose their rank. Kael took one step forward. Then silver runes suddenly ignited beneath the throne. His entire body jerked violently. Ilaragaspith. Restraint magic. The council had prepared for him to resist. 4 royal guards lifted silver spears toward their king. Not enough to kill him. Only enough to remind him the throne was no longer entirely his. Kael's breathing turned ragged. Rage darkened his face. Elara, he said again. This time her name sounded like a wound being torn open. She wanted to run to him. Wanted to tell him about the children. Wanted to scream that she was not barren, not cursed, not a traitor. But one look at Varric's cold smile told her the truth. If they discovered the heirs tonight, the twins would never survive until morning. So Elara did the hardest thing she had ever done. She looked away from her mate and allowed the guards to drag her from the throne hall while snow fell around her like a funeral blessing. At the great doors, she turned once. Kael had dropped to one knee beneath the glowing restraint runes. Blood stained his mouth. His golden eyes remained locked on her with naked desperation. Not abandonnement. Not rejection. Helplessness. Then the doors slammed shut between them, and Queen Elara walked into exile, carrying the kingdom's hidden heirs beneath her heart. The journey beyond the frostline should have killed her within the first night. That was the purpose of exile. Not mercy. Not justice. A slower execution wrapped in ancient law. The royal guards rode north without speaking, their wolves cutting through waist-deep snow beneath a sky the color of old steel. Elara walked behind them in torn ceremonial white, wrists still bound in moon-steel chains that drained warmth from her body with every step. No cloak, no food, no Volf. The kingdom wanted its barren queen erased quietly by winter itself. Blood marked her footprints across the snow. The twins stirred restlessly beneath her ribs each time icy wind slammed against her body. Their movements no longer felt fragile. Sometimes they pulsed with strange, cold strength that spread through her veins like silver frost. The farther north they traveled, the stranger the weather became. Trees froze from the inside. Ice climbed across black rocks in spirals resembling ancient symbols. Once, Elara woke after collapsing briefly in the snow and found a dead wolf lying beside her body. Not attacked, not wounded. Forzenzolit. Its head bowed toward her feet. The youngest guard made a frightened sign against evil. Frostfang, he whispered. The older guards immediately silenced him, but Elara heard, and fear rooted deeper inside her chest. The Frostfang line was supposed to be extinct, destroyed after the Winter Purge nearly 200 years ago. Children were taught stories about them beside hearth fires, monstrous wolves capable of freezing armies alive, rulers whose powers spread like plague through entire kingdoms. But those were legends, weren't they? By the second night, one guard finally spoke directly to her. You should not have betrayed him. Elara kept walking. Snow cracked beneath her bare feet. I didn't. The guard snorted. The council says otherwise. The council lies. Then why didn't the king stop them? That question hurt worse than the cold. Elara looked ahead into endless white darkness. Because something is wrong inside the palace. The guard laughed bitterly. There is always something wrong inside palaces. No one spoke again after that. Near dawn on the third day, they reached the frost line. Even the wolves refused to go farther. The northern wasteland stretched endlessly beyond the cliffs, buried beneath storms older than memory. Jagged mountains vanished into white skies. Frozen forests twisted like skeletal hands beneath layers of snow and ice. Nothing lived there, at least nothing human. The captain dismounted slowly. For the first time since the tribunal, He looked uncomfortable. He cut the chains from Alara's wrists. Raw flesh tore open beneath the metal. "You know the law," he muttered. "No shelter beyond this point." Alara stared at her bleeding hands. The mate bond pulsed faintly. Far away. Weak. Still alive. That alone kept her standing. The captain hesitated before handing her a small dagger hidden beneath his cloak. The other guards stared at him in shock. "You'll die anyway," he said quietly. "Might as well die armed." Alara took the blade without speaking. The younger guard looked pale. "Captain," "She was our queen." Silence fell. Even now, even after everything, some still remembered. The captain mounted his wolf again. "Do not come south if you survive." It was not a threat. It sounded almost like regret. Then the guards turned and vanished into the storm, leaving Alara alone at the edge of the world. For several long moments, she simply stood there breathing frost. The silence felt unnatural. No birds, no river, no distant wolves, only wind. Then the pain hit. Her knees buckled violently. The twins twisted beneath her ribs as sharp agony ripped through her stomach. Alara gasped and dropped into the snow, clutching herself desperately. Too much stress. Too much cold. Fear clawed through her chest. No. Please no. Not now. Not here. Snow swirled harder around her body. The air temperature dropped so suddenly the nearby trees cracked apart with gunshot sounds. Ice exploded across the cliffside. Alara froze. The storm was reacting to her. Or to them. The twins finally settled again after several agonizing moments. But when Alara lifted shaking hands from her stomach, frost covered her skin in delicate silver patterns. Runes. Ancien. Alive. A distant howl echoed across the wasteland. Alara's blood turned cold. Another answered. Then another. Wolves. A whole pack. And they were coming closer. Panic surged through her exhausted body. She forced herself upright and stumbled toward the frozen forest ahead. Boots long gone, feet numb and bleeding against hidden ice beneath the snow. Branches clawed at her hair and face. The howls grew louder, closer. She could hear paws crushing snow behind her now. Predators. Her breath tore painfully through her lungs. Not much farther. Please. The twins shifted again. The air exploded outward, in freezing wind. Every tree around her instantly iced over. The howls stopped. Complete silence swallowed the forest. Alara turned slowly. 5 massive northern wolves stood between the trees. Gray, Iscarad, monstrous creatures large enough to rip through armored men. Yet none attacked. All 5 wolves stared directly at her stomach. Then, one by one, they lowered their heads. Alara stopped breathing. Impossible. Northern wolves bowed only to alphas. The largest wolf stepped closer slowly, golden eyes fixed on her with terrifying intelligence. Snow gathered across its fur like frost-covered armor. It sniffed the air once. Then it whined softly, not threatening, protective. The twins moved beneath Alara's ribs again. The wolf immediately stepped backward, as if recognizing them, or fearing them. A deep cracking sound suddenly echoed through the forest. The wolves instantly snapped their heads northward, their ears flattened. Fear. Real fear. Then, Alara heard it too. Something enormous moving beneath the ice. The ground trembled. The wolves scattered immediately into the snow without another sound. Alara stumbled backward. The frozen lake ahead of her began to crack. Long black fractures spread beneath layers of ancient ice. Something was down there. Something alive. A shadow larger than any wolf moved slowly beneath the frozen surface, watching her. Alara's pulse hammered wildly. The ice exploded. A massive claw burst upward through snow and frozen water. Alara screamed and fell backward. A creature dragged itself partially from beneath the lake. Not wolf, not bear, but something ancient twisted between both. White fur covered a body scarred by centuries of battle. One glowing blue eye fixed directly onto Alara. Then the creature inhaled sharply and lowered itself onto one knee. Not before her, before the children inside her. The world went silent. The beast bowed its massive head, and somewhere far away beyond the frost line, Alpha King Kale suddenly woke from sleep, with Alara's name on his lips, and frost spreading across the palace walls. Kael had not slept properly since the night they took her. The palace healers called it exhaustion. The council called it grief. But the truth was far uglier. Something inside him was dying. The first signs began months before Alara's trial. At first it was only weakness after shifting. Then came the black veins beneath his skin, the blood coughing, the unbearable cold that settled into his bones each night, no matter how large the fire burned. His wolf was rotting alive, and no healer could explain why. Kael stood alone on the balcony outside his chambers, while snow drifted across the royal capital below. Winter should not have reached Ashenfang yet. The southern winds were still warm, yet frost now covered the palace towers every dawn. Since Alara's exile, the cold had spread worse each night, as though the kingdom itself mourned her absence. Kael gripped the stone railing until it cracked beneath his hands. Alara, the mate bond, still existed. Faint, damaged, but alive. That alone kept him from tearing the council apart, because if she were truly dead, the bond would have shattered completely. Someone had tampered with it during the tribunal. He knew that now. The high priestess denied it, of course. The council denied everything. Yet Kael remembered the exact moment the black moon water touched the bond between him and Alara. The connection had twisted unnaturally, muffled beneath ancient magic. And beneath that pain, something else. A second pulse. No. Två. Small. Flickering. Kael's breath shook violently. He had felt it only for a heartbeat before the connection vanished beneath the priestess's spell. But his wolf remembered. Children. Impossible. The kingdom had declared Alara barren for 3 years. The Moon Temple confirmed it every season. Yet Kael could still remember the exact instant his instincts screamed the truth inside the tribunal chamber. She had been carrying his heirs. The realization nearly drove him mad. His claws dragged through stone. If the council knew. No, they couldn't. Otherwise they would never have exiled her alive. Kael turned sharply as footsteps approached behind him. Commander Rhys entered the balcony, snow clinging to his dark armor. Unlike the council, Rhys did not lower his gaze around the king. They had survived war together long before Kael claimed the throne. What did you find? Kael asked immediately. Rhys hesitated. That alone was enough to darken the air around them. The guard captain, who escorted the queen north, is dead. Kael went still. How? Frozen. Rhys swallowed slowly, completely solid from the inside. The king's wolf surged violently beneath his skin. Frost spread across the balcony floor. Where? South of the frost line. Kael's eyes burned gold. Impossible. Nothing survived the frost line. Not ordinary wolves. Not soldiers. And certainly not enough to kill armed royal guards without leaving blood behind. Unless Frostfang. The ancient name echoed through Kael's memory like a curse. His mother used to whisper stories about them when he was a child. Wolves born carrying winter itself in their blood. A royal line powerful enough to bring entire kingdoms to ruin. Extinct for centuries. At least officially. Rhys lowered his voice. There's more. Kael looked at him sharply. The council ordered the bodies burned before sunrise. Silence. Then slowly, dangerously, Kael smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. They're hiding something. Rhys nodded once. I believe Lord Varric expected the queen to die quickly, but she didn't. No. Kael stared out into the storm. Somewhere beyond endless snow and mountains, Alara was still alive. His mate, his queen, and possibly carrying the last Frostfang heirs in existence. A deep sickness twisted inside his chest. Not fear for himself, fear for her. Because if the Frostfang bloodline truly survived inside their children, every royal house in the north would hunt them to extinction. A knock echoed from inside the chambers. Without waiting for permission, Lord Varric entered. The council lord's silver robes swept across the stone floor like smoke. My king, he said smoothly. The Southern Alphas await your decision regarding winter taxation. Kael did not turn around. You entered my chambers uninvited. Varric smiled faintly. The kingdom cannot afford isolation while instability spreads. Instability. Kael finally faced him. The temperature in the balcony dropped instantly. Rhys stepped back automatically. Varric remained perfectly calm. "You exiled my queen," Chaol said softly. "You restrained your king before the court. And now winter spreads across Ashenfang, while my wolves grow sick beneath my own roof." The council lord folded his hands behind his back. "Your Majesty grows emotional where the former queen is concerned." "Former queen?" Chaol's wolf snarled violently inside him. "You overstep, and you weaken." Varric answered quietly. Silence exploded between them. Rhys immediately reached for his sword. "Because no one spoke to the Alpha King that way." But Varric continued calmly. "The kingdom sees your illness. The Alphas whisper already. They fear your bloodline is cursed." Chaol's eyes narrowed. "There is no curse. Then why are your wolves dying?" The question struck harder than expected. Over the past year, stronger warriors across Ashenfang had begun losing control during shifts. Some went feral. Others simply collapsed during hunts and never rose again. And every victim belonged to Chaol's bloodline. Someone was poisoning the royal wolves. Slowly, carefully, Varric stepped closer. "You need stability, my king, not distractions buried beneath snow." Chaol suddenly grabbed him by the throat. The balcony walls cracked outward instantly from the force of his rage. Rhys froze. Even Varric's composure slipped for one brief second. Golden wolf eyes blazed inches from his face. "If Alara dies beyond the frost line," Chaol said quietly, "I will feed this council to my wolf one piece at a time." Varric struggled for breath, but still managed to whisper, "Then perhaps you should pray she is already dead." Chaol slammed him against the wall hard enough to splinter stone. But before he could speak again, pain exploded through his chest. Chaol staggered violently backward. Black blood spilled from his mouth onto the snow-covered floor. Rhys caught him before he collapsed. Varric adjusted his robes slowly, hiding satisfaction behind concern. "The poison spreads faster now," he said softly. Chaol looked up sharply. "Too late." The council lord already realized his mistake. Rhys heard it too. "Poison, not curse. Poison." Varric smiled faintly. "Careful, my king. Grief makes monsters of us all." Then he turned and walked away. The moment he disappeared, Chaol seized Rhys by the arm. "You heard him." Rhys nodded grimly. Chaol wiped blood from his mouth. "Prepare horses." Rhys stared at him in disbelief. "You can barely stand." "I don't care. The frostline will kill you." Chaol's voice dropped lower. "So will staying here." Far beyond the kingdom, Alara stood frozen before the ancient creature rising from beneath the lake. The beast towered above her, enormous enough to crush wolves beneath one paw. White fur dripped with frozen water. Ancient scars crossed its body like carved rivers through snow. But it bowed, not to her, to the twins. Alara could barely breathe. The creature's single glowing eye remained fixed on her stomach with terrifying awareness. Then slowly, impossibly carefully, it lowered its massive head until frost-covered fur brushed against her hand. Warm, not cold. Despite its appearance, warmth pulsed beneath the beast's skin like living fire buried beneath ice. The twins moved excitedly. The creature rumbled softly in response. Recognition. The realization sent fear spiraling through Alara's chest. "What are you?" she whispered. The beast exhaled heavily. Snow swirled upward around them. Ancient symbols briefly appeared across the frozen lake before vanishing beneath fresh ice. Then a voice entered Alara's mind. Not human. Not wolf. Old. Older than the throne. Frostborn. Alara staggered backward. The creature watched her silently. "You can speak?" "Not speak. Remember." Its massive head turned toward the North Mountains. The blood returns. A terrible feeling spread through Alara's stomach. "What blood?" The creature looked directly at her. "Your sons." "Son." The word hit like lightning. Tears instantly filled Alara's eyes before she could stop them. 2 boys. Chaol's sons. Alive. The creature slowly lowered itself onto the frozen ground before her like a guardian kneeling before royalty. "The hunters will come." Alara's heart tightened. "Who?" "The ones who burn the Winter Queens." Fear hollowed her chest. "The Frostfang Queens. Real." not myth, not stories. The creature's eye narrowed toward the distant south. And the king who loves you walks toward death. Ilara stopped breathing. Kael. The mate bond suddenly pulsed violently. Bine. Blood. Cold darkness swallowing him alive. Ilara grabbed her chest sharply. No. The beast rose instantly. The poison eats his wolf. Her pulse hammered wildly. Poison. Not sickness. Not curse. The council. Everything inside her snapped into terrible focus at once. The exile. The tribunal. The false infertility rituals. Kael's illness. The weakened mate bond. The council had planned everything. Not just to remove her, to destroy the throne itself. And now Kael was coming north. Toward her. Toward the frost line. Toward whatever ancient nightmare slept beneath the ice. Ilara pressed trembling hands against her stomach. For the first time since exile, anger finally burned, hotter than fear. If the council wanted her dead, then they should have made certain winter finish the job. The twins were born during the longest storm the frost line had seen in 100 years. Even the ancient beast feared that night. The labor began beneath a bleeding moon. Ilara woke choking on pain so violent she thought her spine had cracked apart. Wind screamed through the broken watchtower where she had hidden for months, rattling ancient stone while snow buried the entrance inch by inch. The creature from beneath the lake waited outside, like a silent guardian. The wolves gathered too, dozens of them, gray northern hunters, massive, ice-furred beasts, creatures feared across every kingdom. They surrounded the tower in absolute silence beneath the storm, watching, waiting, protecting. Another contraction tore through Ilara's body. She screamed into the darkness. No healers. No moon priestess. No mate beside her. Only cold stone and blood and winter. The council had condemned Ashen Fang's queen to give birth alone beyond the edge of the world. Tears blurred her vision as she collapsed onto torn furs beside the dying fire. Please, she whispered weakly to the unborn boys. Please survive. The storm answered. The entire tower shook violently. Ice exploded across the walls in glowing silver patterns. The twins moved beneath her ribs with frightening power. Then suddenly, every wolf outside howled. Not with hunger, with reverence. Ilara gasped sharply as ancient magic surged through her veins. The air turned white. Snow spiraled inside the tower despite the sealed stone. The first child came moments later. The instant his cry echoed through the ruins, the storm stopped. Complete silence swallowed the frost line. Ilara stared down, trembling at the infant placed against her chest. Ah boy. Black hair already damp against pale skin. Golden eyes. Kael's eyes. Her heart nearly shattered. My son. The child looked up at her with impossible awareness for a newborn. Then frost spread gently across Ilara's arms where he touched her skin. Not painful. Protective. Another contraction ripped through her body before she could recover. The second twin arrived beneath a burst of silver light, so bright it blinded her momentarily. This child did not cry immediately. He stared. Wide, dark eyes, fixed on the tower ceiling as snow swirled around him unnaturally. Then slowly, ice climbed across the stones overhead in the shape of a crown. The wolves outside immediately lowered themselves to the ground. Even the ancient beast bowed its massive head. Ilara's breathing turned shallow. The second child finally looked toward her, and his eyes glowed icy blue. Not human, not wolf. Ancien. The storm returned instantly. Lightning split the mountains. Somewhere deep beneath the frozen lake, something enormous roared in answer. Fear crawled through Ilara's exhausted body. What are you? She whispered brokenly. The child blinked once. The glowing blue faded slowly back into gold. Only then did he begin to cry, like an ordinary infant. But nothing about either boy was ordinary. The ancient beast entered the tower before dawn. It lowered itself before the twins carefully, its single glowing eye reflecting silver firelight. Ilara clutched both boys protectively despite exhaustion. The creature rumbled softly. Frostborn heirs. Ilara swallowed painfully. Tell me their bloodline. The creature studied her for a long moment. The last of the Winter Throne. Her stomach tightened. The Winter Throne. a name erased from royal history. Even Kale rarely spoke of the ancient northern rulers destroyed during the Frostfang Purge. They said the Frostfang queens were monsters. The creature's gaze darkened. They were feared. Why? Because kings fear what they cannot control. The answer felt too familiar. The creature slowly extended one massive claw toward the twins. The blue-eyed child immediately reached toward it fearlessly. The beast almost looked saddened. This one will carry the old power. Ilara held him closer, instinctively. And the other? The creature looked toward Kale's golden-eyed son. This one will lead wolves. A distant memory surfaced suddenly. Kale, once telling her that ancient royal bloodlines sometimes split their gifts between siblings. One ruler, one weapon. Fear wrapped around her heart. What happens when the kingdoms discover them? The creature's silence answered before its voice did. War. Weeks passed. Then months. Winter became survival. Ilara learned how to hunt rabbits beneath the snow, while carrying one child against her chest and the other strapped to her back in wolf fur. She learned which frozen streams still held fish beneath thin ice. She learned how to sleep lightly enough to wake the moment storms changed direction. The twins grew frighteningly fast. By 6 months, both boys already crawled through snow without shivering. By 1 year, wolves followed them openly. And sometimes, impossible things happened. When the blue-eyed twin cried, windows frosted solid. When the golden-eyed twin laughed, nearby wolves appeared from the forest within minutes. Ilara named them Cassian and Rowan. Cassian, for the old northern stars. Rowan, for the red winter trees that survived even the coldest storms. They were beautiful boys. Too beautiful, too powerful. And every day, Ilara feared the kingdoms more. At night, she still felt Kale through the damaged mate bond. Not clearly, never clearly, but enough. Pain, exhaustion, loneliness. Sometimes rage so violent it woke her gasping. Other nights, she sensed something worse. Weakness, as if his wolf struggled simply to remain alive. The poison was spreading. She knew it now with terrible certainty. The council was killing him slowly, while keeping him isolated behind the throne. And Kale still believed she was dead. The realization haunted her, because despite everything, despite the exile, despite the silence during the tribunal, she could not stop loving him. One night during deep winter, the mate bond suddenly surged awake so violently. Ilara dropped the wooden bowl she carried. Blood flooded her senses. Kale's blood. Pain tore through her chest. Then came voices, muffled through the bond. The southern packs grow restless. Without an heir, the throne weakens. Your wolf cannot survive another season. Ilara's pulse hammered wildly. The council was moving openly now, preparing for Kyle's death, preparing for succession, preparing for war. Cassian suddenly looked up from the floor. Papa hurting. Ilara froze. The twins were barely 3 years old. They should not be able to sense the mate bond. Rowan touched the frozen window beside him. Ice instantly spread across the entire wall. We go south, he said quietly. Fear crawled down Ilara's spine. No. Both boys looked at her together. Too calm, too aware. The dark men coming, Rowan whispered. A howl echoed outside immediately afterward. The ancient beast appeared moments later beyond the tower entrance, fur covered in fresh snow, its glowing eye fixed sharply toward the south. They have found you. Ilara's blood turned cold. How? The beast lowered its head toward the twins. The power grows too loud. Then, distant wolf howls echoed through the mountains. Not northern wolves. Pack hunters. Royal hunters. Ilara immediately grabbed both boys. Panic surged violently through her veins. The council. They finally knew. Another howl sounded closer this time. Cassian's golden eyes narrowed. They smell us. The tower suddenly trembled. Rowan stood slowly near the frozen wall, and for the first time since birth, the child's wolf appeared. Not fully formed, only a massive shadow behind him, made of silver frost and glowing blue eyes. The temperature inside the tower plummeted instantly. Even the ancient beast stepped backward. Ancient fear flashed across its face. Not fear of the child. Fear of what he would eventually become. Ilara's heart pounded wildly. No more hiding. No more surviving quietly beyond the frost line. The kingdoms were coming for her sons now, and somewhere far south beneath a dying throne, Alpha King Kael still had no idea his heirs were alive. The kingdom had already begun preparing for Kael's funeral. No one dared say the words aloud. Not in the throne hall. Not before the royal banners. Not while the Alpha King still breathed. But death lingered everywhere, inside Ashenfang Palace now. In the whispers that stopped when Kael entered rooms. In the healers avoiding his eyes. In the council, quietly discussing succession behind closed doors. And most of all, in the way the wolves no longer howled beneath the palace during full moons. Kael felt it every day. His bloodline was weakening. The poison spread through him slowly, cleverly hidden beneath symptoms that resembled an old alpha curse. His strength fluctuated unpredictably. Some mornings he could still split training pillars with his bare hands. Other days his wolf barely answered him at all. The council blamed grief. The priestesses blamed the broken mate bond. Neither explanation satisfied him anymore. Because Kael remembered war. He remembered real sickness. This felt different. Deliberate. Like venom carefully measured over time. He stood inside the royal war chamber, staring at the northern map while commanders argued behind him. The Frostline patrols vanished again, one alpha said uneasily. 3 more hunting parties found frozen solid. That region should be empty. It isn't, Rhys answered coldly. Silence followed immediately. Commander Rhys stepped beside the king. Dark armor dusted with snow from recent travel. Kael did not look away from the map. Tell them. Rhys's jaw tightened. We found tracks. What kind of tracks? Another alpha demanded. Rhys hesitated. Children. The room went silent, and wolves traveling beside them. A few commanders laughed nervously, until Kael spoke. How large were the wolves? Rhys met his gaze carefully. Large enough that no ordinary child should still be alive. A cold feeling settled through the chamber. The frost line was death itself. Nothing survived there. Not families. Not children. Unless. No one dared say the name aloud. But Kael saw fear spread across the commanders anyway. Frostfang. One alpha finally spoke carefully. Your Majesty, there are stories. Ancient northern spirits. Creatures wearing human forms. I don't care about stories. Kael interrupted sharply. His voice sounded rougher lately. Darker. Like his wolf struggled beneath every word. I care about who keeps slaughtering royal patrols. Rhys crossed his arms. The bodies show no blade wounds. Kael's golden eyes narrowed. How were they killed? Frozen internally. Silence crashed through the room. One older commander quietly muttered a prayer. Because every northern wolf knew exactly which bloodline could kill that way. Kael dismissed the meeting moments later. The instant the doors closed, he gripped the table sharply as dizziness hit him again. Black veins crawled briefly beneath his hand before fading. Rhys cursed softly. You need rest. I need answers. Kael coughed violently into his fist. Blood splattered across the war map. Rhys looked away grimly. That frightened Kael more than the blood itself, because Rhys had once watched him fight through arrows lodged in his chest without flinching. Now, even his oldest friend looked afraid. Kael wiped his hands slowly. What aren't you saying? Rhys remained silent too long. Then finally, the Queen's escort. Kael's entire body stilled. Rhys continued carefully. Before the guards died, one of them reached a border camp. Hope and terror collided violently inside Kael's chest. Alive? Barely. What did he say? Rhys swallowed slowly. He claimed the former queen crossed the frost line alive. Kael's pulse slammed painfully against his ribs. Alive. Alive. The mate bond suddenly surged so violently, his knees nearly buckled. For one brief heartbeat. Warmth. Children laughing. Snow. Then, darkness swallowed the connection again. Kael grabbed the edge of the table hard enough to splinter wood. She lives. Rhys nodded once. But there's more. Kael forced himself upright. The guard said wolves bowed to her. Silence. Then Kael laughed quietly. Not because it was amusing. Because deep down, he already knew. The signs had been there from the beginning. The impossible snow during the tribunal. The ancient frost symbols appearing around her. The way northern wolves reacted to her scent during winter hunts years ago. The council noticed too. That was why they exiled her, before discovering the truth fully. She's Frostfang, Cale murmured. Rhys looked uneasy, even hearing the name aloud. If the other kingdoms discover this, they'll hunt her. And the children. Rhys added carefully. Kyle looked up sharply. You felt them too. Rhys stared. For several long seconds neither man spoke. Then Rhys exhaled slowly. At the tribunal, when the priestess touched the mate bond, your aura changed. Cale remembered that moment perfectly. 2 tiny heartbeats. Tfo. Not one. His heirs. His sons. Alive somewhere beyond the edge of the world. Rage, unlike anything he had ever known, flooded his chest. The council exiled his pregnant mate into the Frostline. They left his unborn children to die, and all this time they stood beside him pretending loyalty while poisoning his blood. Cale's wolf surged so violently the chamber torches exploded outward. Rhys immediately stepped back. My king, prepare horses. You'll never survive the journey in your condition. Then I'll die finding them. The answer came instantly, without hesitation. Rhys closed his eyes briefly, because that was the problem with Cale. Once he loved something, nothing in the world could make him abandon it. Not kingdoms, not war, not death itself. A knock interrupted them. Lord Varric entered smoothly, silver robes immaculate as always. His gaze immediately fell upon the broken torches. How unfortunate, he murmured. Cale stared at him silently. For the first time since taking the throne, he no longer saw a trusted advisor. He saw a snake wrapped around the kingdom's throat. Varric approached slowly. The Southern Alphas request audience regarding succession. Succession. The word hung like poison in the air. Rhys's hand moved toward his sword instinctively. Cale's expression remained terrifyingly calm. Succession, he repeated softly. Varric inclined his head. The throne must prepare for all possibilities, meaning my death, meaning stability. Cale stepped closer. The room temperature dropped sharply. Tell me something, Varric. The council lord smiled faintly. Of course, my king. When exactly did you decide to murder me? Silence exploded through the chamber. Rhys instantly drew steel. Varric did not move. Only his eyes sharpened slightly. A dangerous accusation. Kyle suddenly slammed him against the stone wall. The impact cracked marble. You poisoned my bloodline. No. Cale's claws pressed against Varric's throat. You poisoned my wolves. Varric smiled then. Actually smiled. And Cale realized something horrifying. The man was not afraid. Your Majesty, Varric whispered painfully. If I wanted you dead, you would already be buried. Cold crawled through Cale's spine. Because the confidence in Varric's voice sounded real. Too real. What do you mean? Varric's expression darkened for the first time. The Frostfang line should have remained extinct. Kyle froze. Varric continued quietly. Your queen carried forbidden blood from the beginning. We merely discovered it too late. Liar. She infected the mate bond. Cale nearly tore his throat open. But then Varric delivered the final blow carefully. Did you never wonder why your wolf began dying after claiming her? Silence. A single terrible thought entered Kyle's mind. No. Varric saw the hesitation immediately. The Frostfang queens destroyed kingdoms before, he whispered. And now your hidden heirs will do the same. The mate bond surged violently. Bine, fear, Elara, and beneath it, 2 powerful pulses suddenly flared alive. The twins. Cale staggered backward instinctively. At that exact moment, every window in the war chamber froze solid. Ice exploded across the walls in glowing silver veins. Rhys cursed. Varric went pale. And far beyond the frost line, Rowan opened his glowing blue eyes as royal hunters surrounded the tower in the snow. The hunters arrived before dawn. Elara sensed them before the wolves did. The mate bond had always sharpened her instincts around danger, but now motherhood transformed those instincts into something savage. She woke instantly from uneasy sleep, with Rowan pressed against one side of her, and Cassian curled beneath heavy furs beside the dying fire. Silence filled the tower. Too much silence. No wind. No wolves. No movement. Elara's blood ran cold. The northern pack surrounding the ruins every night had vanished. Fear crawled up her spine. The ancient beast stood outside the tower entrance motionless, massive body tense beneath falling snow. Its glowing eye remained fixed toward the southern forest, waiting, listening. Then Alara heard it too, the crunch of synchronized footsteps beneath ice. Hunters. Dozens. The twins woke immediately. Cassian sat upright first, golden eyes narrowing unnaturally for a child barely 4 winters old. "Bad men," he whispered. Rowan said nothing, but frost instantly spread across the stone floor beneath his bare feet. Ilara rose quickly and crossed to the narrow tower window. Shapes moved between the trees. Black armor, silver spears, royal hunters. Her pulse stumbled violently. The council had found them. "How?" she whispered. The ancient beast answered without turning. "The power calls to blood." Alara's stomach twisted. The twins were growing too strong to hide. Every strange storm, every frozen patrol, every wolf kneeling before them. The frost line itself had begun whispering their existence to the kingdoms beyond it. Another sound echoed suddenly. A horn. Low. Ancien. The hunters were signaling surrounding units. They were not here merely to search. They came prepared for war. Cassian climbed from the firs and walked calmly toward the doorway despite the danger outside. His dark hair fell into eyes too much like Kale's. "Ilara," he said quietly. "Not mother. Not mama. Ilara." As though instinct itself understood fear. "They're scared." The statement unsettled her more than if he sounded frightened. "How do you know?" Cassian looked toward the forest. "I smell it." The child's wolf was awakening early. Far too early. Rowan finally stood beside his brother. Snow swirled around him immediately. Tiny crystals floated upward unnaturally from the frozen floor. They brought silver. The tower trembled faintly. Ilaras, pulse hammer. Silver weapons meant the council expected monsters, not children. The ancient beast turned toward her at last. "Take them north." "No," Ilara answered instantly. The creature's eye narrowed. "The hunters will kill them. They'll kill everyone if the frostline awakens." Silence followed, because both understood the truth. If Rowan lost control, entire armies could freeze. Ilara had seen hints already. The storms answering his emotions. The ice reacting to his heartbeat. The wolves bowing instinctively before him. A child carrying ancient Frostfang power was dangerous enough. A terrified child hunted through snow? Disaster. Another horn sounded closer this time. Then, voices echoed through the forest. "Search every structure. Lord Varric wants proof. Burn the ruins if necessary." Ilara's blood froze. Varric. The council lord knew. Not fully, perhaps, but enough. She turned quickly toward the twins. "Listen to me carefully." Cassian immediately stepped closer, protectively beside Rowan. The sight shattered her heart. Children should not understand fear this young. "You do not use your power unless I tell you." Rowan tilted his head slightly. "Even if they hurt you?" The question nearly broke her. "Yes." The child's glowing eyes darkened. "You're lying." Another violent crack echoed outside. The hunters had reached the outer ruins. The ancient beast moved toward the entrance slowly, enormous claws digging into frozen stone. "I will hold them." Ilara stared at it sharply. "They'll kill you." The creature looked almost amused. "I was old, before their kingdom existed." Then it stepped into the storm. Chaos erupted immediately. Wolves roared through the forest. Men screamed. Steel clashed against ice. The tower shook violently from impacts outside. Cassian ran toward the window. Ilara grabbed him instantly. "No, but it's alone. It can survive." A terrible roar split the mountains. Not wolf. Not human. The ancient beast. Snow exploded upward beyond the ruins. Hunters flew through the air like broken dolls. The twins stared wide-eyed. Another horn sounded frantically. Then came the alpha command. "Take the children alive." Every wolf in the forest whimpered instantly. Ilara stopped breathing. That voice, not Gael, but powerful, royal. Arrive à l'alpha. The council sent northern war packs. Panic surged through her. If another alpha claimed the twins publicly before Kale reached them, The kingdoms would tear themselves apart fighting for Frostfang heirs. The tower entrance suddenly exploded inward. A hunter crashed through stone and rolled across the floor covered in blood and frostbite. He looked barely alive. "Elara," he gasped, weakly. She froze. The hunter recognized her. Before she could respond, another figure stepped through the ruined entrance. Tall, massive, wrapped in black northern armor. A scar crossed one pale eye. Alpha. The wolves outside immediately lowered themselves beneath his presence. The stranger's gaze landed on the twins. Then, slowly, fear crossed his face. Real fear. Because Rowan's eyes had begun glowing again. The Alpha recovered quickly and drew a silver blade. "By order of the Royal Council," he said coldly. "The Frostborn heirs belong to Ashenfang." Elara moved in front of the boys instantly. "They are children. They are weapons." Cassian snarled. Actually snarled. The sound froze everyone in the room. The Alpha stared sharply at him. Too much dominance. Too much instinct. Too much Kale. Understanding flickered across the warrior's expression. "The king doesn't know," he murmured. Elara said nothing. The Alpha lowered his sword slightly. "Then Lord Varric truly means to seize the throne." The statement chilled her. "You serve Varric." The warrior's jaw tightened. "I serve Ashenfang." Outside, another monstrous roar shook the mountains. The ancient beast was weakening. The Alpha glanced toward the storm. "We don't have much time." Elara kept herself between him and the twins. "Why are you helping us?" The man looked toward Rowan again. Because, despite his control, tiny spirals of frost were now climbing the walls. And the Alpha understood exactly what would happen if royal hunters cornered a frightened Frostfang child. "Because if those boys die," he said quietly, "winter dies with them." Silence fell. Then suddenly, a royal hunter burst through the doorway behind the Alpha and screamed, "The king is here!" Everything stopped. Elara's heart forgot how to beat. Kyle. No. He should not have come north. Not poisoned. Not weakened. Not into this. The mate bond suddenly exploded awake between them. Pine. Relief. Need. Love so violent it nearly dropped her to her knees. And beneath it all, Kyle felt the twins. Clearly this time. Every frozen torch in the tower burst into silver flame at once. Outside, wolves across the frost line began howling together beneath the storm. The Alpha warrior turned sharply toward the forest. Fear crossed even his scarred face now. Because only one thing was more dangerous than hidden Frostfang heirs. A dying Alpha king discovering his sons existed. Kale killed the first hunter with his bare hands. Not cleanly. Not mercifully. The royal soldier barely had time to recognize his king before Kale tore through silver armor and drove him into the snow hard enough to crack frozen earth beneath his spine. The remaining hunters immediately dropped to one knee. Not from loyalty. From instinctive terror. Because despite the poison destroying him from the inside, Kyle still radiated Alpha dominance powerful enough to shake the frost line itself. Snow whipped violently around him as he stepped through the storm. Black cloak torn, blood staining his mouth. Golden eyes burning, like dying suns. Elara stopped breathing at the sight of him. He looked worse than she imagined. Thinner, harder, as though grief had carved pieces from him during every month they spent apart. But the moment his gaze found her, everything else vanished. The storm quieted, unnaturally. The wolves lowered themselves completely into the snow. Even the ancient beast emerging wounded from the forest stopped moving. Kyle stared at Elara, as though seeing someone returned from the dead. Then his eyes shifted downward, toward the children standing behind her. Silence shattered the world. The mate bond exploded fully awake. No priestess magic. No black moon water. Nothing blocking it anymore. Kale staggered visibly, as the truth slammed into him all at once. His sons. His blood. Alive. Cassian instinctively moved in front of Rowan protectively. The gesture nearly destroyed Kale, where he stood, because the older twin looked exactly like him. Not only in face, in posture, in the way his small body positioned itself between danger and family, without hesitation. Kyle's breathing turned uneven. "Elara," he whispered brokenly. She had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways during lonely nights beyond the frost line. Anger, relief, screaming, accusation. But now that he stood before her again beneath falling snow, all she felt was exhaustion. Exhaustion so deep it reached her bones. "You came," she said softly. Pain crossed Cale's face. "As if I could stay away." The words almost broke her. But before either could move, Lord Commander Darius stepped forward sharply. "Your Majesty, the Frostborn heirs are unstable. We must secure them immediately before—" "Secure?" Cale repeated quietly. The dangerous softness in his voice froze every wolf nearby. Darius swallowed hard but continued. "The council ordered containment." Kyle slowly turned toward him. The poison had weakened his body, not his presence. "Did the council also order my sons hunted through snow?" Darius went pale. Instantly. Around them, the hunters avoided looking directly at the king, because every man present suddenly realized the same terrifying truth. They had followed orders against the Alpha King's hidden heirs. Kale looked back toward the twins. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Then Rowan stepped forward. The snow beneath his feet crystallized instantly. The blue glow returned to his eyes. And Cale froze. Not from fear. Recognition. Some ancient instinct, buried deep within royal blood, understood immediately what stood before him. Frostfang. The extinct winter line had returned through his sons. Cale's wolf reacted violently. Not rejection. Submission. The king dropped to one knee before Rowan. The entire hunting party gasped. No Alpha King knelt. Not before enemies. Not before councils. Not before gods. Yet Kyle lowered himself willingly before a child, because instinct older than kingdoms demanded it. Rowan stared at him curiously. "You're sick." The honesty of it cut through the silence. Kyle laughed weakly despite himself. "Yes." The child stepped closer slowly. "Il a las pulse, Hamel." No one moved. Even the storms seemed to wait. Rowan lifted one small hand toward Cale's face. The instant their skin touched, ice exploded across the mountains. Every wolf cried out simultaneously. Silver frost spread through Kale's veins visibly beneath his skin before shattering outward like broken glass. The king gasped sharply. Black blood poured from his mouth onto the snow. "Ilara!" Reese shouted from somewhere behind the hunters. Panic surged through her chest. Kyle collapsed forward onto one hand, breathing violently. The poison. Something was happening to the poison. Rowan blinked in confusion. "It hurts him." "No," Kale rasped immediately. He looked up slowly toward the child. Wonder spread across his face, because the black veins beneath his throat were fading. Impossible. The poison was disappearing. The hunters stared in horror. The ancient beast rumbled deeply from the forest edge. Frostblood rejects corruption. Alara's mind raced. The twins' power could cleanse the poison. That was why the council feared them. Not because Frostfang blood destroyed kingdoms. Because it threatened the council's control over one. Kale slowly stood again, still breathing heavily. His gaze found Alara once more. Everything softened. Not the king. Not the Alpha. The man. "I thought you died." Emotion tightened her throat painfully. "They wanted you to think that." Guilt crossed his face so violently she almost looked away. "I should have burned the tribunal to the ground. You would have lost the kingdom. I nearly lost you anyway." Silence settled between them. Years of love, betrayal, buying, all standing together beneath falling snow. Cassian suddenly stepped closer to Kale, cautiously. Unlike Rowan, the older twin looked uncertain. Studying him, judging him. Kyle looked at the boy carefully. Cassian's golden eyes narrowed. "You made Mama cry." Several hunters visibly panicked at the accusation. No child spoke to the Alpha King that way. But Kale only closed his eyes briefly. "Yes," he answered quietly. Cassian considered him for a long moment. Then, "She still loves you." Alara nearly died from embarrassment. "Cassian." "It's true." Kyle stared at her. The raw hope in his expression hurt more than anger ever could. Before either could speak again, one wounded hunter stumbled through the storm, screaming, "The southern packs." Everyone turned sharply. More wolves were approaching. Hundreds this time. War banners emerged through snow carrying the crescent crest of Ashenfang's Southern Alliance. At their center rode Lord Varric himself. Ilara's blood turned cold. The council came personally, and judging by the army behind them, they no longer intended to hide what they wanted. Varric's gaze landed immediately on the twins. For the first time since Ilara met him, the old council lord looked afraid. Not shocked, not confused. Afraid, because Rowan's eyes were glowing brighter now, and frost had begun spreading outward across the entire valley. Varric slowly dismounted from his wolf. "My king," he called calmly despite the tension. "Step away from the children." Kael's entire body went still. The hunters surrounding him immediately backed away instinctively, because every warrior present sensed the same thing. The Alpha King was about to become dangerous. Varric continued carefully. "The Frostborn line nearly destroyed the North once before. Those boys cannot be allowed to live." Cassian grabbed Ilara's hand tightly. Rowan simply stared at the council lord, and the snow began falling harder. "No." Kyle's voice cut through the storm like steel dragged across bone. The single word carried enough alpha force that several southern wolves immediately dropped their gazes. Even the warhorses shifted uneasily beneath the pressure rolling off the king. Varric remained still, but Ilara noticed something important. The council lord did not meet Rowan's glowing eyes directly. Fear. Real fear. Kael stepped forward slowly, placing himself between the army and his family. His family. The realization struck Ilara unexpectedly hard. Not the throne. Not the kingdom. Them. "You hunted my sons," Kael said quietly. Snow swirled violently around his boots. "You poisoned your king." The southern warrior shifted uneasily. Many, clearly, had not known. Varric's expression stayed calm, but his voice sharpened. "I protected Ashenfang. You exiled a pregnant queen into the frost line, and she survived because she is not human." The words echoed across the valley. Murmurs spread through the southern ranks. Frostfang. The forbidden name finally hovered openly between them. Varric pointed directly toward Rowan. "That child carries winter death in his veins. Every ancient record warns the same thing. Frostfang heirs destroy kingdoms." The ancient beast emerged farther from the forest then, towering behind Ilara, like a mountain of white scars and ice. The southern wolves recoiled immediately. Some nearly fled. The creature's glowing eye locked onto Varric. "Liar." The voice boomed across the valley without sound, vibrating through bone and snow alike. Panic spread through the soldiers. "What is that thing?" "Moon, protect us. It speaks." Varric's composure cracked briefly. Kael looked sharply toward the creature. "You know him." The beast lowered its massive head slightly. "The last chronicler of the Winter Throne." Silence fell again. Ilara stared at the creature in shock. "Chronicler? Memory keeper." The beast's eye turned toward the army. "They burned my queens." Varric suddenly snarled. "They burned monsters." The ancient creature roared. Snow exploded outward across the valley in blinding white force. Several southern wolves collapsed instantly beneath the pressure. The Frost Queen saved the North from starvation, while your ancestors fed children to war. Varric's face darkened. "Lies." The creature stepped closer. "Your bloodline betrayed the Winter Throne for power." Kael's gaze snapped toward Varric sharply. The council lord finally lost patience. Enough. Silver flames erupted suddenly across the snow. Hundreds of hidden moon runes ignited beneath the valley floor. Ilara's stomach dropped. A trap. The entire Frostline meeting had been planned. The runes activated instantly around Rowan. The child cried out sharply, as silver chains of light wrapped around his body. "Ilara!" Cassian screamed. Rowan fell to his knees gasping. Frost exploded outward, uncontrollably from his skin. The mountains trembled. Kael moved instantly, but Varric shouted an alpha command amplified through moon magic. "Knail!" Several wolves collapsed immediately. Even Kael staggered briefly beneath the force. Not natural. The council lord carried enhanced moon authority somehow. The realization hit Ilara all at once. The priestess. The poisoned mate bond. The tribunal. Moon magic had been corrupted from the beginning. Varric raised one hand. Silver symbols burned across his skin. "I warned the throne years ago," he said coldly. "Frostfang blood must never return." Rowan screamed again. Ice storms spiraled violently from his body now. The child was losing control. The southern warriors panicked. "Contain him. He's freezing the valley." Cassian tried to reach his brother, but Alara grabbed him desperately. "No." The older twin fought her immediately. "He's scared." "I know." Rowan's power surged harder. Entire sections of the valley flash froze instantly. Wolves turned to ice where they stood. Chaos erupted. Kyle roared and broke through the alpha suppression with sheer force alone. Blood exploded from his mouth as he lunged toward Rowan. Varric shouted another command. Silver spears ignited around the valley. The southern army moved, not toward the twins, toward Kale. Alara stopped breathing. The council intended to kill him publicly. "Traitor king," one council loyalist shouted. "Protect the kingdom." The first spear flew. Kale caught it midair and snapped it apart. The second pierced his shoulder. The third nearly struck Rowan, until Cassian moved. The older twin stepped in front of his brother instinctively, and every wolf in the valley froze, because a massive black wolf spirit appeared behind the child. Not illusion, not shadow. A true alpha spirit. Ancien, monstrous. The spirit wolf opened glowing golden eyes. Then every southern wolf dropped flat into the snow. Submission. Complete submission. Cassian's voice echoed unnaturally through the valley. "Don't touch my brother." The storm exploded outward. Varric staggered backward in disbelief. "Ilara," Kyle whispered hoarsely. "The twins." One carried Frostfang winter magic. The other carried royal alpha dominance beyond anything Ashenfang had seen in generations. Together, they were terrifying. Rowan's silver chains shattered violently. The child collapsed into Alara's arms, sobbing. Instantly, the storm weakened. The frost stopped spreading, because all he wanted was safety, not destruction. Ilara held him tightly while tears burned her eyes. "He's just a child," she whispered brokenly. Silence spread slowly across the valley. The southern soldiers stared at the twins differently now. Not monsters. Boys. Frightened little boys hunted by their own kingdom. Varric saw the shift immediately, and panic finally crossed his face. "No," he snapped sharply. "Do not be fooled by them." Kale turned slowly toward him. The king's shoulder bled heavily. Black poison still stained his veins. But now, something else moved beneath his skin too. Silver frost. The twins' power was cleansing him gradually. "You lied to your throne," Kale said quietly. Varric's eyes hardened. "I protected it. You poisoned your king. I preserved the kingdom." The council lord's mask finally cracked completely. "You were dying already," he shouted. "Your bloodline weakened after mating her." The Frostfang curse spreads through bonds, through heirs, through wolves. The ancient beast roared furiously. Lies. But Kale suddenly looked at Alara. Pain crossed his face. "Is it true?" The question shattered her. Not because he feared her, because some small wounded part of him still feared losing everything. Ilara stepped toward him slowly through the snow. "You felt the bond," she whispered. "Did it ever feel evil to you?" Kyle stared at her silently. "No, never." Even now, beneath war and blood and betrayal, the mate bond still felt like home. Varric realized he was losing control, so he made his final mistake. He drew silver moonfire directly toward Rowan. The child screamed, and Kale moved faster than anyone could see. The Alpha King crossed the valley in a blur and drove his claws through Varric's chest. The world went silent. Snow drifted softly around them. Varric looked down slowly at the hand buried through his armor. Shock crossed his face. "You would kill your council." Kyle's golden eyes burned with quiet devastation. "You touched my son." Then he ripped the council lord's heart free beneath the falling snow. Chaos exploded instantly afterward. Some southern wolves fled. Others knelt. A few still drew weapons uncertainly. But it no longer mattered, because the moment Varric died, the moon runes beneath the valley shattered, and hidden truth flooded the mate bond completely. Ilara gasped sharply. Kale staggered. Memories not their own surged through both of them simultaneously. Ancient queens, burning palaces, children slaughtered in snow, and at the center of it all, the royal council of Ashenfang, not the Frostfangs. The council had orchestrated the purge centuries ago to seize power from the Winter Throne. The Frostfang queens were never monsters. They were betrayed rulers. The realization broke through the valley like dawn after endless night, and every wolf present understood history had just changed forever. The truth spread through Ashenfang faster than plague. By the time Kale returned south with Alara and the twins, the kingdom was already dividing. Some packs called the Frostborn heirs saviors. Others called them omens of ruin. The southern nobles locked themselves inside their estates and whispered about rebellion. The Moon Temple sealed its gates after priestesses confessed the royal council forced false infertility rituals upon Alara for years. And everywhere the same story traveled beside winter winds. The barren queen had never been barren at all. She had carried the kingdom's true heirs, while her enemies tried to bury them alive beneath snow. Alara hated how quickly people changed. The same nobles who once watched her humiliation in silence now bowed so deeply their foreheads nearly touched stone. The same priestesses who declared her cursed suddenly called her blessed by the old moon. Cowards. All of them. Yet she endured it for the twins, for Cassian and Rowan, who stared wide-eyed at the towering palace they should have been born inside instead of the Frostline ruins. Kyle never left their side during the journey south. Not once. Even weakened, he rode beside Alara's carriage, every hour of every day, as though looking away might make her disappear again. Sometimes she caught him watching the boys with naked disbelief, especially Rowan. The younger twin's power frightened. Even experienced wolves now. Frost formed wherever his emotions slipped beyond control. Windows iced over when he became upset. Storm clouds gathered unnaturally above the roads whenever he sensed danger near Kael. And yet, with his family, Rowan was gentle. He laughed quietly. He loved stories. He fell asleep, curled against Kael's chest every night, as though instinct recognized safety before memory could. Cassian remained more guarded, protective, watchful, too aware of danger for a child his age. The older twin never fully trusted palace walls. Neither did Alara. The moment Ashenfang's black towers appeared on the horizon, dread settled heavily into her chest. Kael noticed immediately. You don't have to enter the palace. She looked toward him sharply. Snow drifted lightly across his dark hair. Since Rowan cleansed part of the poison, color had slowly begun returning to Kael's face. The black veins no longer reached his throat, but exhaustion still haunted his eyes. This is your kingdom too, he continued softly. Alara almost laughed at that. Kingdom. The place where she was chained publicly while nobles debated whether her womb had value. The place where no one stopped her exile. The place where she nearly lost her sons before they even breathed. Kael understood the silence in her expression immediately. Pain crossed his face. I failed you. The honesty of it hurt worse than excuses would have. Alara looked away toward the towering gates. You were trapped too. I should have chosen you anyway. The answer came instantly. No hesitation. No throne before her. The mate bond pulsed warmly despite everything. And that frightened Alara. More than hatred ever could. Because after all the suffering, she still loved him enough to break. The gates opened slowly as the royal procession entered Ashenfang. Silence swallowed the capital. Thousands of wolves lined the streets, watching, waiting. Alara's hands tightened instinctively around Rowan, while Cassian sat beside Kael atop the king's massive black wolf. The sight alone felt unreal. The hidden heirs of Ashenfang, returning alive from the Frostline. Then the whispers began. That's them, the Frostborn. The queen survived. Look at the younger one's eyes. Fear spread quickly whenever Rowan looked directly at someone. Alara hated it. The child noticed too. He pressed closer into her side quietly. They think I'm bad, he whispered. Her heart cracked instantly. No, she answered firmly. They fear what they do not understand. Rowan looked down sadly. Like you. The words destroyed her. Kael heard them too. His jaw tightened violently. When the procession reached the palace steps, the entire royal court waited outside beneath silver banners, including the high priestess. The old woman looked suddenly much smaller than Alara remembered. Not powerful anymore, only tired. Kyle dismounted first. The entire court knelt instantly. Then the king turned not toward the throne hall, toward Alara. Every noble watched in stunned silence as Alpha King Kale crossed the palace steps and lowered himself onto one knee before his exiled queen. Gasps rippled through the court, because kings did not kneel publicly, especially not before women accused of treason months earlier. Kale looked up at Alara, with eyes stripped completely bare. "I failed, my Luna," he said quietly enough that only the nearest wolves should have heard. Yet the entire courtyard remained silent enough for every word to spread. "I allowed fear, politics, and poisoned counsel to stand between my mate and the truth." No one moved. No one breathed. Kale bowed his head fully. "I ask forgiveness not as king." His voice broke slightly, but as the man who should have found you sooner. Alara felt tears burn behind her eyes instantly. The court stared in disbelief. This was not political theater. Kale's pride would never allow such humiliation for appearances. He meant every word. The mate bond pulsed painfully warm. Then Cassian climbed down from Kale's wolf and walked directly between them. The little boy frowned seriously. "Mama already forgave you." Alara almost choked. Several nobles looked horrified at the interruption, but Kale laughed softly for the first time in years. Real laughter. The sound stunned the court more than anything else. Rowan tugged lightly on Alara's sleeve. "Can we go inside now? I'm cold." The entire palace froze. Then, suddenly, ice exploded across the upper towers. A violent roar echoed from within the throne hall itself. Every wolf snapped toward the sound instantly. Kale rose immediately, instincts turning lethal. That wasn't Rowan. Fear swept through the courtyard. Another roar shook the palace. This one deeper, monstrous. Commander Reese sprinted from the entrance moments later, covered in blood. "My king." Kyle moved instantly. "What happened?" Reese looked pale. "The dungeons." Ilara's stomach dropped. "What about them?" Reese swallowed hard. "The council wasn't poisoning only you." Silence crashed down. Then from beneath the palace, a howl echoed upward. Not wolf. Something worse. Ancien. Hungry. The ancient beast beside the palace gates suddenly snarled violently. They woke it. Kale's eyes narrowed sharply. "Woke what?" The creature's glowing eye turned toward the depths beneath Ashenfang. "The thing your council fed for generations." Fear crept through Alara's chest. Not metaphorical fear. Instinctive fear. Like prey, sensing something ancient, crawling toward the surface. Reese spoke quietly. "We found hidden chambers beneath the old throne." The high priestess suddenly collapsed to her knees, weeping. "We tried to keep it sleeping." Kale turned sharply toward her. "What did the council do?" The old woman looked up, trembling, and whispered the words that changed everything. "The Frostfang queens were never executed. Silence. They were sacrificed." The palace shook violently. Stone cracked. Screams erupted from below. Then black smoke burst upward through the throne hall windows, carrying the scent of blood and old death. The ancient beast roared furiously. "The devourer wakes." Rowan's eyes suddenly glowed bright blue, and for the first time since exile, the child looked truly afraid. The palace began freezing from the inside. Frost crawled across pillars. Silver chandeliers shattered overhead. Servants fled screaming through the corridors as black smoke poured upward from beneath the throne hall like something breathing through the bones of the kingdom itself. Kyle grabbed Rowan instantly and pulled him against his chest. "It's not you," he said firmly. The child trembled violently anyway, because the creature below was answering his power, responding to Frostfang blood. The ancient beast stepped protectively before the twins, fur bristling with visible rage. Long ago, the Winter Queen sealed it beneath this mountain. Alara's pulse hammered painfully. "What is it?" The beast's glowing eye darkened. "The hunger that eats wolves." Cold spread through the courtyard. Not ordinary cold. Wrongness. Every wolf present felt it immediately. Some collapsed, clutching their chests. Others whimpered uncontrollably. Even Kale's massive black wolf growled beneath his skin in panic. The high priestess sobbed openly now. The council fed prisoners to it for generations, she whispered. They believed the devourer granted strength to the throne in exchange for blood. Kale's expression turned murderous. They poisoned my bloodline. Feeding that thing. The old woman nodded miserably. The Frostfang queens discovered the truth centuries ago. They tried to destroy it. Ilara's stomach twisted, and the council framed them as monsters. Yes. Another deafening roar erupted beneath the palace. The ground split open across the throne courtyard. Nobles screamed. A massive black claw burst upward through stone. Chaos exploded instantly. Kale shoved Ilara and the twins backward, just as the creature beneath Ashenfang finally emerged. It was enormous, far larger than the ancient beast from the Frostline. A nightmare of twisted wolf flesh and shadows fused together by centuries of corrupted moon magic. Hollow silver eyes opened across its body like living wounds. Bones protruded beneath black fur dripping with dark blood. And worst of all, the thing wore chains. Anciennes. Frost-covered chains wrapped around its neck and limbs. Frostfang chains. The Winter Queens really had sealed it here. The devourer roared again. Half the palace windows exploded outward. Several weaker wolves collapsed unconscious instantly. Cassian stepped protectively before Rowan. The older twin's wolf spirit appeared behind him again, massive and black with glowing golden eyes. But even that ancient alpha spirit looked small before the devourer. Kyle drew his sword slowly. The creature immediately focused on him. Its many silver eyes widened, unnaturally. Then it smiled. Actually smiled. A voice echoed directly into every mind present. Royal blood. Kyle's entire body tensed. The devourer inhaled deeply. Your line fed me well. Rage exploded through Kale's aura. He lunged instantly. The king crossed the courtyard in a blur of claws and steel, slamming moon-forged blade directly into the creature's throat. The devourer barely reacted. One massive limb struck Kale sideways hard enough to send him crashing through palace stone. Ilara, Rhys shouted. The twins screamed simultaneously. The devourer turned toward them immediately. Recognition flashed across its countless eyes. Frostborn. The creature's hunger intensified instantly. The last winter hearts. The ancient beast threw itself between the monster and the children with a thunderous roar. The collision shattered half the courtyard. Wolves scattered in terror as two ancient creatures tore into one another beneath falling snow and broken stone. Ilara grabbed the twins tightly. Stay behind me. Cassian looked toward Kale, buried beneath rubble. Papa hurt. The mate bond screamed through Ilara's chest. Bine. Blood. But alive. Still alive. Kyle emerged moments later, coughing black blood, sword barely steady in his grip. The poison inside him reacted violently to the devourer's presence. As though the creature was calling its corruption home, the high priestess cried out suddenly. It's feeding on him. Black veins spread rapidly beneath Kale's skin again. The devourer roared triumphantly. Yes, the realization struck Ilara instantly. The council never poisoned Kale directly. The devourer did. Years of feeding royal blood to the creature corrupted the entire throne line slowly from within. And now, it wanted the twins too. Frostfang heirs. Ancient, winter magic. Enough power to free it completely. The devourer smashed the ancient beast through a palace wall. The Frostline guardian crashed hard into shattered stone, barely moving afterward. Ilara's fear turned to fury. No more running. No more surviving quietly, while monsters decided her children's fate. The Frostfang queens endured this alone centuries ago. She would not. The twins suddenly grabbed her hands simultaneously. Power exploded through the mate bond, through the bloodline, through winter itself. Snow began falling harder across the capital. Every wolf looked upward in shock, because the storm above Ashenfang had turned silver. Ancient runes awakened across Ilara's skin, glowing beneath torn sleeves like moonlit frost. The entire courtyard froze still. The high priestess fell trembling to her knees. The winter crown. Ilara barely heard her. Memories flooded her mind violently. Not her own. Queens wrapped in silver fur standing against darkness beneath ancient moons. women sealing the devourer beneath mountains, while kingdoms betrayed them from behind. The Frostfang line had never ruled through destruction. They ruled through sacrifice. The truth hit Elara so hard tears filled her eyes. Every Winter Queen died, sealing this monster again and again while history painted them as villains. The devourer sensed the awakening instantly. Its countless eyes widened with hunger. The queen returns. Kyle looked toward Elara in shock. Snow spiraled around her now, like living moonlight. The twins stood beside her, untouched by the storm. Cassian's alpha spirit towered behind them. Rowan's frost spread across the broken courtyard in glowing patterns. And Elara no longer looked like the woman exiled months ago. She looked ancient, terrible, beautiful, the Winter Queen, reborn. The southern wolves slowly lowered themselves to the ground. Then the northern wolves followed. Olnebewan, entire packs kneeling beneath the storm, not to fear, to recognition. Kale stared at her like he was seeing destiny unfold in real time. The devourer lunged suddenly. Kyle moved first. The king threw himself directly between the monster and Elara. Claws tore through his side brutally. Blood exploded across the snow. Kyle. The devourer roared triumphantly as Kale collapsed to one knee. Mine. The creature reached toward him again. Then Rowan screamed. The entire world froze. Not metaphorically. Literally. Ice exploded outward from the child in a catastrophic wave that swallowed the courtyard instantly. Towers froze solid. Snow crystallized midair. The devourer itself became trapped beneath rapidly spreading Frostfang ice. But Rowan couldn't stop. The storm kept growing. The child's power spiraled out, uncontrollably fueled by terror and grief. Papa. Cassian grabbed his brother desperately. Rowan, stop. But the younger twin was crying too hard now. The frost line itself answered his pain. Mountains cracked in the distance. The capital began freezing alive. Elara understood with sudden horror. This was how kingdoms died. Not through evil. Through love, twisted into fear. The Frostfang line never destroyed kingdoms intentionally. They lost control, protecting what they loved. Kale realized it too. Despite blood pouring from his wounds, he forced himself upright and stumbled toward Rowan through the storm. Elara, no, Rhys shouted. The cold was lethal now. Kale kept walking anyway. Each step froze blood beneath his feet. Rowan. The child looked up sobbing violently. Papa hurt. Kale dropped painfully to one knee before him, despite the storm shredding his body apart. I know. Ice spread across Kyle's arms instantly. Still, he reached forward slowly. You're not a monster. The storm weakened slightly. Elara stopped breathing. Kale cupped Rowan's face gently with shaking hands. You hear me? The child cried harder. Kale pulled him carefully against his chest despite the deadly cold. You are my son. The words shattered something inside Rowan. The storm collapsed instantly. Snow drifted softly again across the ruined courtyard. The devourer remained frozen beneath layers of ancient Frostfang ice, and in the silence afterward, every wolf in Ashenfang bowed. Not to the throne, to the family standing at the center of winter itself. Kale looked up toward Elara through blood and snow, exhausted, broken, devoted, and for the first time since exile, Elara walked toward him without fear. She knelt beside her mate beneath the silver storm while their sons clung to them both. No throne, no court, no council left standing between them. Only love, only winter, only the kingdom finally witnessing the truth. The Frostfang bloodline had never been the curse. It was the shield that kept darkness buried beneath the world. And the woman they once exiled as Baron had returned, not merely as queen, but as the protector of every wolf alive.